The alley reeked of damp concrete and desperation, a place where shadows swallowed screams. Ethan's heart pounded as he pressed himself against the cold brick wall, his breath shallow, eyes darting toward the sound of footsteps echoing closer. He wasn't supposed to be here, not witnessing a murder, not running for his life, and definitely not falling in love with the one person who could either save him or doom them both. It was a humid July night in Brooklyn, the kind that clung to your skin like a second layer. Ethan Carter, 25, had been walking home from his late shift at the diner when he heard the muffled cry. He should have kept moving. Everyone in this neighborhood knew better than to linger, but something pulled him toward the narrow alley off Flatbush Avenue. A man's voice, sharp with panic, cut through the air, followed by a sickening thud. Ethan froze, his sneakers rooted to the pavement, as he saw two figures struggling under a flickering streetlight. One, a burly man in a black hoodie, pinned another to the ground, a glint of steel flashing in his hand. Before Ethan could process it, the blade sank into the victim's chest, and the assailant's head snapped up, locking eyes with Ethan. He ran, legs burning, lungs screaming. Ethan tore through the streets, the killer's heavy footsteps pounding behind him. He didn't know how he ended up at the community center, its glass doors a beacon in the dark. He burst inside, nearly colliding with a group of people folding chairs after what looked like a support group meeting. That's when he saw him, Lucas Reed, 23, with curly blonde hair and eyes like a summer sky, standing at the front of the room, a clipboard in hand. Lucas's gaze met Ethan's, and in that split second, something unspoken passed between them, a spark, a lifeline. "Are you okay?" Lucas's voice was steady, but his eyes widened as he took in Ethan's disheveled, sweat-soaked shirt, trembling hands, the wild fear in his green eyes. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. "How do you tell a stranger you just saw a man die? That the killer saw you, too?" I need help," Ethan managed, his voice hoarse. "Someone's after me." Lucas didn't hesitate. He grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward a back office. "Stay here," he said, locking the door behind them. The room was small, cluttered with posters about inclusivity and pride flags pinned to the walls. Ethan sank into a chair, his mind replaying the alley, the blood, the killer's cold stare. Lucas knelt in front of him, his touch gentle but firm. "Tell me what happened." Ethan's story spilled out in fragments. The alley, the murder, the chase. Lucas listened, his face a mix of concern and resolve. "You're safe here," he said, but his eyes flicked toward the window, scanning the dark street outside. "This center, it's a safe space for a lot of people, including me. I run the youth group here. We don't turn people away." Ethan nodded, trying to focus on Lucas's voice instead of the dread pooling in his stomach. "I don't even know why I came here," he admitted. "I just ran." "You ran to the right place," Lucas said, a small smile breaking through the tension. "But we need to figure out what to do next. If someone's after you, we can't stay here long." The weight of Lucas's words hit Ethan hard. He was a witness to a murder, a target now, and he'd dragged this kind-hearted stranger into his mess. Yet Lucas didn't flinch. There was something about him, his calm strength, his quiet courage that made Ethan feel like he wasn't alone for the first time that night. They didn't have long to plan. A loud bang echoed from the front of the center, followed by the sound of glass shattering. Lucas grabbed Ethan's hand, his grip tight. "We need to move. Now." They slipped out the back door, the cool night air hitting them as they darted into another alley. Ethan's pulse raced, but Lucas's hand in his was an anchor, grounding him amidst the chaos. They ducked behind a dumpster, holding their breath as heavy footsteps approached. Ethan's eyes met Lucas's, and in that moment, he saw more than just fear. There was trust, a flicker of something deeper, something that felt dangerously like hope. "Who are you?" Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. Lucas's lips curved into a faint smile. "Someone who's not letting you face this alone." As the footsteps faded, they crept out, moving toward the subway station a few blocks away. Ethan didn't know where they were going, but for the first time in hours, he felt a spark of fight in him. He wasn't just running from death, was running towards something. Someone who might just be worth surviving for. The subway station smelled of stale coffee and metal, its fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Ethan and Lucas crouched behind a pillar, the rumble of an approaching train masking their ragged breaths. Ethan's mind was a storm fear of the killer, guilt for pulling Lucas into this, and a confusing warmth every time Lucas's shoulder brushed against his. They'd barely escaped the community center. The crash of glass still echoed in Ethan's ears, a reminder that the man in the black hoodie wasn't giving up. Lucas had led them through a maze of backstreets, his knowledge of Brooklyn's underbelly surprising Ethan. "How do you know these routes so well?" Ethan asked, his voice low as they waited for the train. Lucas's blue eyes flickered with a shadow of pain. "I've had to run before," he said simply. "Not from a murderer, but from people who didn't like who I am." He didn't elaborate, but the weight of his words hung between them. Ethan wanted to ask more, but the train screeched into the station, and Lucas pulled him aboard. They found seats in a nearly empty car, the city's lights blurring past the windows. Ethan glanced at Lucas, who was scanning the platform they'd just left. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said. "You could walk away. I wouldn't blame you." Lucas turned, his gaze steady. "I'm not walking away. You saw something awful, and you're in danger. I know what it's like to feel like the world's against you. I'm not leaving you to face that alone." Ethan's chest tightened. He wasn't used to this, someone choosing to stay, especially someone like Lucas, who seemed to carry his own scars with quiet grace. "Thanks," Ethan muttered, looking away to hide the heat rising in his face. They got off at a station in Manhattan, heading to a small apartment Lucas said belonged to a friend who was out of town. The place was cramped but cozy, with mismatched furniture and a rainbow flag draped over the couch. Lucas locked the door and checked the windows, his movements practiced, like he'd done this before. "We're safe here for now," he said. "But we need a plan. You saw the killer's face, right?" Ethan nodded, the memory sharp. He was big, dark eyes, scar on his left cheek. He looked right at me. His voice shook, and Lucas reached out, his hand resting lightly on Ethan's knee. "We'll figure this out," Lucas said. "But first, you need to breathe. Tell me about you. Something normal. It'll help." Ethan hesitated, then let out a shaky laugh. "Normal? I'm a waiter at a greasy diner. I moved to New York 2 years ago. Thought I'd be an artist or something. Instead, I'm serving burgers and dodging murderers." Lucas smiled, and it was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "An artist? Huh. What do you paint?" "Mostly city stuff. Alleys, rooftops, people who don't know they're being watched." Ethan paused, realizing how that sounded. Not in a creepy way. Just, I see stories in people. "I get it," Lucas said softly. "I see stories too. That's why I run the youth group. Kids like my queer kids. Trans kids TVE got stories the world tries to erase. I want to help them tell those stories." Ethan looked at Lucas, really looked at him. The curly blonde hair falling into his eyes. The way his hands moved when he talked. Full of passion. Ethan had never been good at opening up, especially not about the part of himself he'd kept buried, the part that stirred when he looked at Lucas. But here, in this tiny apartment, with danger lurking outside, he felt a pull he couldn't ignore. Their conversation was cut short by a sharp knock at the door. They froze, Lucas's hand tightening on Ethan's. "Stay quiet," Lucas whispered, creeping toward the peephole. His face paled. "It's not him," he said, but his voice was tense. "It's a cop." Ethan's stomach dropped. A cop could mean safety or a trap. The killer had seen him, knew he was a witness. What if he had connections? Lucas hesitated, then opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. The officer, a middle-aged woman with a stern face, held up a badge. "Lucas Reed." "Ethan Carter. We got a report about a break-in at the community center. You two were seen leaving." Ethan's heart raced. How did they know his name? Lucas glanced at him, a silent question in his eyes. "Trust her, or run." Ethan nodded slightly, and Lucas unchained the door, letting the officer in. She introduced herself as Detective Ramirez and sat them down, her questions sharp but not unkind. Ethan recounted the murder, every detail etched in his mind. Ramirez listened, jotting notes, but her eyes kept flicking to the windows, like she was expecting something. "You're in deep," she said finally. "The man you saw, he's connected to a syndicate. They don't let witnesses live." Ethan felt the room spin. Lucas's hand found his under the table, a steadying force. "What do we do?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Stay low," Ramirez said. "I'll put you in touch with a safe house. But you need to move fast. They're already looking for you." As Ramirez left, promising to return with details, Ethan turned to Lucas. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." Lucas's eyes softened. "You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this. I chose you." The words hit Ethan like a tidal wave, stirring something he wasn't ready to name. But as they packed to leave, the sound of a car engine idling outside sent a chill down his spine. They weren't safe, yet the night was far from over. The safe house was a nondescript brownstone in Queens, its windows boarded up, the air inside stale with dust. Ethan and Lucas followed Detective Ramirez's instructions, slipping in through a back entrance under cover of darkness. Ethan's nerves were raw, every creak of the floorboards making him jump. But Lucas's presence beside him was a quiet anchor, steadying his racing heart. They set up in a small bedroom, the only furniture a sagging mattress and a rickety table. Ramirez had given them burner phones and a promise to check in by morning. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. He sat on the mattress, knees pulled to his chest, while Lucas paced, his blonde curls catching the faint light from a cracked lamp. "We can't stay here long," Lucas said, his voice low. "If that guy's part of a syndicate, they've got eyes everywhere." Ethan nodded, his mind replaying the alley, the killer's scar, the way his eyes had burned into him. "I keep seeing his face," he admitted. "Every time I close my eyes." Lucas stopped pacing and sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You're not alone in this," he said. "I know it feels like the world's caving in, but we'll get through it. Together." Ethan looked at him, the dim light softening Lucas's features. There was a strength in him, forged from surviving his own battles Ethan could only guess at. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan asked. "You don't even know me." Lucas's smile was bittersweet. "Maybe I see something in you. Something worth fighting for." He hesitated, then added, "When I came out at 16, my family kicked me out. I ended up on the streets, scared out of my mind. Someone helped me back a stranger who didn't have to. I promised myself I'd pay it forward. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd spent so long hiding his own truth, his attraction to men. The fear of what it meant in a world that could be cruel. But Lucas's openness, his courage, cracked something open inside him. I've never told anyone, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. About who I am. I didn't think I could. Lucas's hand found his, their fingers interlocking. You can now, he said softly. With me. The moment stretched, charged with a quiet intensity. Ethan leaned closer, drawn to Lucas's warmth, but a sharp buzz from the burner phone shattered the silence. It was Ramirez. You've got a problem, she said. Her voice clipped. One of my contacts spotted a car circling your block. Black SUV. Tinted windows. Stay put, but be ready to move. Ethan's stomach churned. Lucas's grip on his hand tightened, his eyes scanning the room for an escape. We need a backup plan, Lucas said. If they find us here, we're trapped. They scoured the house, finding a loose floorboard in the kitchen that led to a crawl space. It wasn't much, but it could buy them time. As they worked, Lucas shared more about his life growing up in a small town. The bullying. The moment he realized he was gay and the world didn't end. Ethan listened, his own walls crumbling. He told Lucas about his art, how he'd sketch strangers in coffee shops, capturing their stories in charcoal and ink. For a moment, they weren't fugitives, they were just two people finding each other in the dark. But the reprieve didn't last. A loud crash came from the front door, followed by the sound of boots on the floor. Ethan's heart stopped. Lucas pulled him toward the crawl space. But before they could hide, a figure appeared in the doorway, a man. Not the killer from the alley, but someone new, his face hidden by a ski mask. Found you, the man growled, raising a gun. Lucas shoved Ethan behind him, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. You don't want to do this, he said. We're not a threat. The man laughed, cold and hollow. You saw too much, kid. Both of you. Ethan's mind raced. The crawl space was too far, the window boarded shut. But Lucas didn't back down. He stepped forward, hands raised, his voice calm but firm. You're not a killer. I can see it in your eyes. You're just following orders. The man hesitated, his gun wavering. It was enough. Ethan grabbed a lamp from the table and swung it, catching the man's arm. The gun clattered to the floor, and Lucas tackled him, pinning him down. They tied him up with an extension cord, their hands shaking but working in sync. We need to go, Lucas said, grabbing the burner phone. Now. They slipped out the back, the night swallowing them as they ran. Ethan's pulse pounded, but Lucas's hand in his was a lifeline, a promise that they'd keep fighting. The city stretched out before them, a maze of danger and hope. And for the first time, Ethan believed they might make it together. The streets of Queens blurred as Ethan and Lucas ran, their footsteps echoing in the pre-dawn silence. They ducked into a 24-hour diner, its neon sign flickering like a dying star. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and pancakes, and the few patrons barely glanced at them as they slid into a booth in the back. Ethan's hands trembled as he gripped a chipped mug, the adrenaline still coursing through him. That was too close, he said, his voice low. If you hadn't talked him down. Lucas's face was pale, but his eyes burned with determination. We got lucky, he said. But we can't keep running blind. We need to know who's after you and why. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. The killer in the alley wasn't just a random thug. Ramirez had said he was part of a syndicate. But why target Ethan so relentlessly? He was nobody, just a waiter with a sketchbook and dreams too big for his paycheck. Lucas pulled out the burner phone, checking for messages from Ramirez. Nothing yet. She's our best shot, Lucas said. But we can't sit here waiting. We need to dig deeper. They used the diner's Wi-Fi to search on Lucas's phone, keeping their heads low. Ethan described the killer again, scar on his cheek. Dark eyes. Maybe 40. Lucas typed the details into a search, cross-referencing local crime reports. They found a blurry photo from a news article about a recent string of murders in Brooklyn, all linked to a syndicate called the Blackthorn Network. The man in the photo had the same scar. That's him, Ethan whispered, his blood running cold. That's the guy I saw? Lucas's jaw tightened. The Blackthorn Network. They're into everything: drugs, extortion. Worse. If you saw one of their hitmen, no wonder they're after you. Ethan's stomach twisted. But why me? I'm not important. Lucas reached across the table, his hand covering Ethan's. You are to me, he said, his voice soft but fierce. And you're a witness. That makes you a threat. The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. Ethan felt the weight of Lucas's gaze, the way it held him steady even as the world crumbled. He wanted to say something, to name the feeling growing inside him. But the diner's door chimed, and a man in a dark coat stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. Lucas tensed, slipping the phone into his pocket. Don't look, he murmured. Just act normal. They ordered food to blend in, but Ethan's appetite was gone. The man sat at the counter, too close for comfort, his posture too deliberate. Lucas kept talking, his voice light, but his hand under the table squeezed Ethan's knee, a silent signal to be ready. When the man stood and approached their booth, Ethan's heart stopped. But instead of a gun, the man pulled out a badge. Detective Harris, he said, his voice gruff. Ramirez sent me. You two are in deeper than you know. Harris slid into the booth, keeping his voice low. The Blackthorn Network's got a mole in the precinct. That's how they found you at the safe house. Ramirez is clean, but she's being watched. You need to lay low, really low, until we can get you into witness protection. Ethan's head spun. Witness protection. Leaving New York. His life. Everything. He glanced at Lucas, whose face was unreadable. What about Lucas? Ethan asked. He's not a witness. He doesn't have to. I'm not leaving you. Lucas cut in, his voice firm. If you're going, I'm going. Harris raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Fine. But you need to move now. There's a safe spot in the Bronx. Off the grid. I'll drive you. They followed Harris to his unmarked car, the city waking up around them. In the back seat, Ethan's hand found Lucas's, their fingers intertwining. The drive was tense, Harris's eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. Ethan wanted to believe they were safe, but the memory of the ski-masked man, the gun, was too fresh. The safe spot was a basement apartment, bare except for a cot and a small TV. Harris gave them new burner phones and a warning: don't contact anyone. Not friends. Not family. I'll be back with Ramirez tomorrow. Then he was gone, leaving them in the dim, claustrophobic space. Lucas turned to Ethan, his expression soft but resolute. We're going to make it through this, he said. I promise. Ethan wanted to believe him, but the fear was relentless. Still, as they sat on the cot, shoulders touching, he felt something stronger than fear, a connection, fragile but growing, that made him want to fight. For himself. For Lucas. For whatever this was becoming. As the day faded, they talked about their fears, their dreams, the lives they'd left behind. Ethan admitted he'd never had a real relationship, too scared to face his own truth. Lucas shared how he'd found a family in the community center, a place where he could be himself. The air between them grew charged, and when Lucas leaned in, his lips brushing Ethan's, it felt like the world paused, just for them. But the moment shattered with a text from Ramirez. Mole confirmed. Trust no one. Stay hidden. Ethan's heart sank. The Blackthorn network was closing in, and their fragile sanctuary was already at risk. The basement apartment felt like a tomb, its concrete walls muffling the sounds of the Bronx outside. Ethan and Lucas sat on the cot, the burner phone screen glowing with Ramirez's warning, trust no one. Ethan's pulse hadn't slowed since the kiss. A fleeting moment of warmth now overshadowed by the creeping dread of betrayal. Lucas's hand rested on Ethan's, his touch a quiet defiance against the fear. We can't stay here, Lucas said, his voice low but steady. If there's a mole, they'll find us eventually. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. But where do we go? Harris said this was off the grid. Lucas's eyes narrowed, thinking. There's a Placia shelter I used to volunteer at. It's not fancy, but it's discreet. No one asks questions. We can hide there until we figure out who to trust. They packed what little they had, a change of clothes from Harris, the burner phones, and slipped out into the night. The shelter was a few miles away, tucked behind a church in a forgotten corner of the city. They moved on foot, sticking to shadows, every passing car a potential threat. Ethan's nerves were frayed, but Lucas's presence kept him grounded, their hands brushing as they walked. At the shelter, a tired but kind woman named Maria let them in. No questions asked. She gave them a small room with 2 cots and a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. You're safe here, she said, echoing Lucas's words from their first meeting. But Ethan wasn't so sure anymore. They settled in, the room's silence heavy. Ethan sat on his cot, sketching on a scrap of paper he'd found, trying to calm his nerves. The lines formed Lucas's face, his curls, his soft eyes, the way he carried hope like a shield. Lucas watched, a small smile breaking through his worry. You're good, he said, nodding at the sketch. You see me. Ethan's cheeks warmed. I've been seeing you since the moment we met, he admitted, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Lucas's smile widened, and he moved to sit beside Ethan, their knees touching. You don't have to keep it all inside, Lucas said. Whatever you're feeling about this, about yous, it's okay to let it out. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd spent so long hiding, afraid of what it meant to want someone like Lucas. But here, in this cramped room, with danger lurking outside, he couldn't hold back anymore. I'm scared, he said. Not just of them. Of this. Of you. Of how much I want this. Lucas's hand cupped Ethan's face, his touch gentle but sure. I'm scared too, he whispered. But I'm not running from this. From you. Their lips met again, this time deeper, more urgent. It was a promise, a rebellion against the fear that threatened to swallow them. For a moment, the world was just them, 2 hearts finding each other in the chaos. But the world didn't stay quiet. A sharp knock at the door jolted them apart. Maria's voice came through, tense. Someone's here, asking for 2 young men. They don't look friendly. Ethan's heart sank. Lucas grabbed their things, his movements swift. Is there a back way out? He asked Maria. She nodded, leading them to a fire escape. They climbed down, the metal creaking under their weight, and hit the ground running. The night was cold, the city a labyrinth of danger. They ducked into an abandoned lot, crouching behind a rusted car as headlights swept past. We need to know who's after us, Ethan said, his voice shaking. Not just the killer, the whole network. Lucas nodded, pulling out the burner phone. Ramirez is our only lead. We have to trust her for now. They sent her a message. Brief and coded, safe for now. Need info on Blackthorn. Help. Then they waited, the silence stretching like a taut wire. When the phone buzzed, Ramirez's reply was curt. Meet me at Pier 17. Midnight. Come alone. Alone, Ethan said, his stomach twisting. That's a trap. Maybe, Lucas said. But it's our only shot at answers. They spent the day moving, never staying in one place too long. Lucas taught Ethan how to spot tails, how to blend into a crowd. Ethan marveled at his resilience, the way he carried himself like someone who'd fought for every inch of his life. As night fell, they headed to Pier 17, the Hudson River glittering under the city lights. Ramirez was there, alone, her face drawn. You're lucky you're still alive, she said. The Blackthorn Network's got a contract on you. Ethan, the man you saw, he's their top enforcer. Goes by Razor. He doesn't leave loose ends. Ethan's blood ran cold. Why me? I'm nobody. You're a witness, Ramirez said. And the man you saw him kill. He was an informant. Razor's cleaning house. And you're next. Lucas stepped forward, his voice sharp. What about me? I'm in this now too. Ramirez's eyes softened. You're in because you chose to be. That's rare. She handed them a flash drive. This has names, dates, locations, everything I've got on Blackthorn. Get it to the feds, and you might have a chance. As she turned to leave, a shot rang out. Ramirez dropped, blood pooling beneath her. Ethan and Lucas dove behind a crate, their hearts pounding as Razor stepped into the light, his scar gleaming under the street lamp. The pier was a trap, the river's dark water reflecting the chaos unfolding. Ethan's chest heaved as he crouched behind the crate, Lucas's hand gripping his arm. Razor stood over Ramirez's body, his gun still smoking, his scarred face twisted in a sneer. Come out, kid, he called, his voice like gravel. You're only making this harder. Ethan's mind screamed to run, but Lucas's steady gaze held him in place. We can't outrun him, Lucas whispered, but we can outsmart him. Ethan nodded, his fear warring with the trust he felt in Lucas. They had the flash drive, Ramirez's last gift, a weapon against the Blackthorn Network. But first, they had to survive. Lucas scanned the pier, his eyes landing on a stack of shipping containers nearby. Follow me, he mouthed, and they crawled, keeping low, as Razor's footsteps echoed closer. The containers offered temporary cover, their rusted surfaces cold against Ethan's back. Lucas pulled out the burner phone, typing a frantic message to Harris, Pier 17. Razor's here. Ramirez down. Help. Ethan watched, his heart in his throat, praying Harris wasn't the mole. Razor's voice cut through the night. You can't hide forever, Carter. You and your boyfriend are done. Ethan flinched at the word, but Lucas's hand squeezed his, a silent reassurance. He's trying to rattle us, Lucas whispered. Don't let him. They moved again, slipping between containers, the river's edge dangerously close. Ethan's mind raced, piecing together a plan. The flash drive, he said. If we can get it to someone Ianyanu, might stop him. Lucas nodded, but before they could move, a gunshot grazed the container beside them, sparks flying. Ethan stifled a cry, and Lucas pulled him down, their bodies pressed together in the dark. We need a distraction, Lucas said, his voice steady despite the danger. Ethan's eyes darted to the pier's edge, where a small maintenance boat bobbed in the water. The boat, he said. If we can start it, we can draw him away. They crept toward the boat, Razor's footsteps maddeningly close. Lucas hotwired the ingenious skill he didn't explain, and Ethan didn't ask about while Ethan kept watch. The motor sputtered to life, and Lucas gunned it, the boat lurching into the river. Razor appeared, firing wildly, but the darkness swallowed them. They didn't go far. Lucas cut the engine near a dock a half-mile down, and they scrambled ashore, hiding in a warehouse. Ethan's hands shook as he clutched the flash drive. "What's on this thing?" he asked. "What's worth all this?" Lucas's face was grim. Names. Cops. Politicians. Blackthorn's whole network. Ramirez was building a case to take them down. Ethan's stomach churned. No wonder Razor wanted him dead. He was a loose end in a conspiracy that reached higher than he'd imagined. But as he looked at Lucas, his curls damp with river mist, Ethan felt a surge of resolve. "We have to get this to the feds," he said. "For Ramirez." Lucas nodded, his eyes fierce. "For all of us." They spent the night in the warehouse, planning their next move. Lucas knew a journalist, a woman named Claire who'd worked with the community center, exposing local corruption. "She's fearless," Lucas said. "If we can get the drive to her, she'll make sure it gets out." But reaching Claire meant crossing the city, a gauntlet of Blackthorn's eyes and ears. They moved at dawn, blending into the morning commute, their hands brushing as they navigated crowded streets. Ethan felt the weight of every glance, every stranger who might be watching. But Lucas's presence was a shield, his quiet strength a reminder of why they were fighting. They reached Claire's office, a small newsroom in Hell's Kitchen. She was a wiry woman in her 40s, her desk cluttered with coffee cups and notepads. When Lucas explained, her eyes lit up. "This could bring them down," she said, plugging the drive into her laptop. Files flashed across the screen: names, dates, transactions. Ethan's breath caught as he saw the scope of Blackthorn's reach. But their victory was short-lived. The newsroom's door burst open, and two men stormed in, guns drawn. Claire dove under her desk, and Lucas pulled Ethan behind a filing cabinet. "Stay down," Lucas hissed, his body shielding Ethan's. The men were Blackthorn's, their faces hard, their movements precise. Ethan's heart pounded, but Lucas's hand in his was a lifeline. Claire shouted, distracting one of the men, and Lucas seized the moment, tackling the other. Ethan grabbed a chair, swinging it at the second man's legs, bringing him down. They tied the men up, Claire calling the feds as Lucas and Ethan caught their breath. "You two are something else," Claire said, a wry smile on her face. "You're gonna make one hell of a story." As the feds arrived, Ethan looked at Lucas, his heart swelling. They'd survived barely, but the fight wasn't over. The flash drive was their weapon, but Blackthorn was still out there, and Razor was still hunting. The feds took the flash drive, their faces grim as they scanned its contents. Ethan and Lucas sat in a sterile conference room, the buzz of activity outside a stark contrast to the quiet terror of the past days. Claire had stayed with them, her presence a reminder that they'd done something bigger than themselves. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Razor was still out there, waiting. Agent Torres, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, briefed them. "The drive's solid," she said. "Names, accounts, enough to dismantle Blackthorn's leadership. But Razor's still a ghost. We've got no real name, no address, just your description. Ethan." Ethan's stomach twisted. He'd seen Razor's face, felt his menace. The idea of him slipping away was unbearable. Lucas's hand found his under the table. A silent promise. What happens to us? Lucas asked. We can't go back to our lives. Can we? Torres's expression softened. Witness protection is your best shot. New names. New city. We'll set you up. But you'll need to cut ties completely. Ethan's heart sank. His art, his dreams of New York would be gone. But when he looked at Lucas, he realized there was something he wasn't willing to lose. We stay together, Ethan said, his voice firm. That's non-negotiable. Lucas's eyes shone, and he squeezed Ethan's hand. Yeah, he said. Together. Torres nodded. We'll make it work. But you need to stay here until we arrange it. Razor's not done with you. The next few days were a blur of guarded rooms and tense waiting. Ethan and Lucas grew closer, their conversations a lifeline in the uncertainty. Ethan sketched Lucas constantly, capturing his laughter, his quiet moments, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about the future. Lucas shared stories of the kids at the community center, how he'd helped them find their voices. Ethan opened up about his fears, his hopes, the truth he'd buried for so long. One night, as they lay on a single cot, Lucas's arm around him, Ethan whispered, I love you. The words felt like a leap, but they were true, raw, undeniable. Lucas's breath caught, and he pulled Ethan closer. I love you too, he said, his voice thick with emotion. No matter what happens, we've got this. But their fragile peace shattered when Torres burst in, her face pale. We've got a problem. Razor's been spotted near the safe house. He's got help someone inside. Ethan's blood ran cold. The mole. They'd trusted Harris, trusted Torres, but someone was feeding Razor their location. Lucas grabbed their things. His jaw set. We need to move, he said. Now. Torres led them to a van, her gun drawn as she scanned the street. They drove through the city, the tension suffocating. Ethan clung to Lucas's hand, his mind racing. If they know where we are, he said, how do we ever get free? We fight, Lucas said, his voice fierce. We've made it this far. We're not giving up. The van stopped at a warehouse in Jersey, a temporary hideout. Torres gave them new phones, new IDs, and a warning, stay off the grid. We're close to nailing Razor, but you need to stay alive. Alone in the warehouse, Ethan and Lucas faced the reality of their situation. Witness protection meant leaving everything behind, but it also meant a chance to start over together. They spent the night planning, dreaming of a life where they could be free, not just from Blackthorn, but to be themselves. But as dawn broke, the warehouse's silence was shattered by the screech of tires. Ethan's heart stopped as Razor stepped out of a black SUV, his scar stark under the morning light. He wasn't alone. 3 men flanked him, their guns gleaming. Lucas pulled Ethan behind a crate, his voice low. We end this now, he said. For us. For everyone they've hurt. Ethan nodded, his fear giving way to resolve. They had no weapons, no backup, but they had each other. And that was enough to fight for. The warehouse was a maze of crates and shadows, its vastness both a shield and a trap. Ethan's heart pounded as he and Lucas crouched behind a stack of pallets, Razor and his men spreading out, their footsteps deliberate. The air was thick with dust and the metallic tang of fear. But Lucas's hand in Ethan's was a steady pulse, a reminder of what they were fighting for. We can't fight them head-on, Lucas whispered, his eyes scanning for an escape. But we can outmaneuver them. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. The warehouse had a loading dock at the back, a possible way out if they could reach it. But Razor's voice cut through the silence, chillingly close. "You're out of places to run. Carter, come out, and I'll make it quick." Ethan's stomach twisted, but Lucas's grip tightened, grounding him. They moved silently, weaving through the crates, their breaths shallow. Ethan spotted a fire alarm on the wall a long shot, but it might buy them time. He pointed, and Lucas nodded, understanding instantly. They crept toward the alarm, Razor's men closing in. Ethan's hand shook as he pulled the lever, the shrill wail splitting the air. Razor cursed, and his men hesitated, giving Ethan and Lucas a chance to sprint toward the loading dock. Bullets grazed the crates around them, splintering wood, but they didn't stop. The dock was open, the morning light blinding after the dim warehouse. They dove behind a stack of tires, the sound of sirens growing closer. Someone had called the cops. Maybe Claire, maybe Torres. Razor appeared, his scar stark against his snarling face, his gun trained on them. "You think you can take me down?" Razor shouted. "You're nothing." Lucas stood, shielding Ethan, his voice steady. "We're enough to end you." Razor laughed, but before he could fire, a spotlight hit him from above a police helicopter. Its roar deafening. "Drop the weapon." A voice boomed. Razor hesitated, his eyes wild, and Ethan saw their chance. He grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and threw it, hitting Razor's arm. The gun fell, and Lucas tackled him, pinning him down as the cops swarmed in. Ethan's legs gave out, and he sank to the ground, Lucas rushing to his side. "We did it," Lucas said, his voice breaking. "We're alive." The feds took Razor and his men, the flash drive's evidence sealing their fate. Torres confirmed the mole was caught, a low-level agent bribed by Blackthorn. The syndicate's leadership was crumbling, and Ethan's testimony would ensure it fell for good. In the aftermath, Ethan and Lucas faced a choice: witness protection or a life on their terms. They chose the latter, trusting the feds to keep them safe in New York. They moved into a small apartment in Brooklyn, a place filled with Ethan's sketches and Lucas's warmth. The community center became their anchor, where they helped others find their strength, just as they'd found each other. One evening, as they sat on their tiny balcony, the city sprawling below, Ethan took Lucas's hand. "We beat the odds," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved me." Lucas smiled, his eyes bright. "We saved each other." Their love, forged in fear and defiance, was their triumphal light that no shadow could extinguish. Against all odds, they'd found a way, not just to survive, but to live.